2. From one of the worst to one of the best, the Washington Commanders might be the best surprise of the 2024 NFL season. We got all that and much more for you on today's episode of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, breaking down all the biggest stories from around the National Football League. We are your hosts, former NFL scout Matt Williamson, myself, Ross Jackson, NFL expert here on the Locked On Podcast Network, filling in for Brian Peacock, who's away today. And on today's episode, we appreciate you very much for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt, today, it's time to pick the rest of the game. So look, we already did our 6-pack yesterday, so make sure you go back for the Saturday games, some of the bigger AFC conversations, everything as well. Those we covered in yesterday's episode. We're going to cover the rest today. We're going to take a look at the Atlanta Falcons, who are still on the outside looking in, but still looking to win their way into the playoffs. The AFC West competition, a little bit hotter than we might have expected throughout this year. And we're going to lead everything off with who feels like the biggest surprise of the season, Matt, the Washington Commanders. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode, today's show, brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. So, Matt, the Washington Commanders, have they been the biggest surprise to you so far this season in a positive way?
Yeah, they are. They're the most positive surprise for sure. So I always like to remember what frame of mind I was in when the season started. And I looked at the whole Commander situation as there's 2 massive goals here. And one is just get the Daniel Snyder stench out of the building. You know, power wash the walls, paint, fumigate, every little bit you possibly can. And let's not ruin Jayden Daniels in the process. You know, I mean, to me, that was enough for the rookie year. And I looked at the roster and thought, man, this O-line is really bad. They just traded both their edge rushers. You know, who's going to rush the passer? Yeah, they have some defensive tackles, but the rest of the defense looks lacking in personnel. And I was wrong. I mean, they way outkicked that coverage. You know, not only do I think the head coach is in consideration for coach of the year, but I think both coordinators did tremendous work as well. Daniels deserves a lot of credit in his own right, but even like the first month of the season, Daniels is a new starter. And there was a really, really high percentage of if he was just pressured, he ran every time. Like clearly the coaching staff just told him, hey, you don't need to go through your progressions. You've been a 2-game starter. You're feeling the heat. Get out of the kitchen, you know, and more and more as the season went on, progressing through his reads, feeling things, professional quarterbacking, and they've maximized the talent. I still don't think it's the most talented roster out there. And we were talking off the air, the O-line's the epitome of that. You know, like, Sam Cosby's one of the best guards in the league. People don't even know his name. I mean, he's a great player. You go get Biotish. I mean, I'm such a firm believer that if you get a plus center, I mean, they don't have to be Dermontti Dawson or Dwight Stevenson, you know, but if you get a plus center, it has such a ripple effect on the offense and especially a young quarterback. And they got, I mean, it went from a hole to a strength, and all of a sudden, you know, scheme aided, they have a foundation now. I didn't think they'd have a foundation for a year or 2.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the perception of this team before the season began, right? Will Jayden Daniels translate to the NFL? That was a big question mark. His size, kind of skinny frame, all those other things. Okay, seems to be fine there, right? Offensive Rookie of the Year front runner, I think he'll be all right.
Looking all right.
We talked about the Washington Commanders offensive line before the season began on an episode here where we took a look at and we ranked all the offensive lines. We had them as the worst offensive line in the NFL. And as you just mentioned, they found ways to circumvent that. And the talent has been better than expected. The whole, you know, having a rebound from the culture disintegration that took place over there, that it was going to take time. And now here they are immediately. This is a team that has consistently outperformed its expectation all throughout the season. And I want to give them credit for that. They absolutely are, in my opinion, along with yours, the biggest surprise so far this season in a positive way, sitting at 11-5. And Matt, they are favored here in week 18, 6.5-point favorites to topple the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, who have probably maybe been one of the more surprising, disappointing teams here in the league this season. What do you like about the Washington Commanders minus 6.5 against the Dallas Cowboys?
It's a tough one because I just don't know how much the Commanders are going to play 60 minutes. You know, I mean,
Right.
It's the worst week ever. I apologize for you having to be thrown into the mix here on picks because, as everyone knows, week 17 is by far the hardest because who's playing, who isn't.
Right.
I think Washington doesn't want to take a step back in week 18. So I'll take them on the road, but I don't feel great about it just because I'm going to say this over and over, unfortunately, today. I just don't know how motivated they're going to be in the second half, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the best possible scenario for them, and it's a realistic scenario, by the way, but the best possible scenario for them is jump out early against a Dallas team that has been susceptible early in games, a Dallas defense in particular has been susceptible early in games, get an early lead, and then that way, in that second half, you can kind of pull it back. But you're right, it's still hard to pick against the spread in that situation, right? Can Dallas maybe close the gap a little bit late? So, yeah, tough one for sure, but this is one that, at least if you want to take someone straight up, I think you'd still feel pretty comfortable going with Washington.
Because Cooper Rush is an NFL quarterback, and he's going to play 60 minutes, and he can score against backups without question, you know?
Yep. So this one, maybe you take the points for Dallas.
I think I'm leaning to talk myself into the points.
Yeah, I think you're talking me into it too. I think I'm with you on that. Let's think of the NFC East here as we transition to another severely disappointing team, the New York Giants, who are 3-point underdogs going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, the Eagles have the division wrapped up. They're going to be starting, I think, their third string quarterback at this point with Kenny Pickett out. And so you think but even despite that, Matt, it's hard for me to say that I could see the Giants being within 3 points. Is that me just being rude?
I'm going to take the Giants just because I really don't think the Eagles have any motivation at all. You know, I mean, there's not going to be both. I would assume, you know, both tackles, both receivers, maybe even the rookie corners, both linebackers, Jalen Carter, Slay, obviously Hurts, Goddard, Barkley. Just doesn't leave much, you know, and don't underestimate a professional athlete who's embarrassed. And I think the Giants actually kind of played well late last week. So I think they keep it close. But
I like that.
I'm not putting any money on it, though.
Right. I like that. Don't underestimate a professional athlete that's been embarrassed. And that is, there's a lot of those in this week of games. That
these guys are putting stuff on tape. This is their resume.
Just something bigger to play for. And speaking of, we'll wrap up this segment with this one because we can do this one pretty quick. The Chicago Bears traveling to take on the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers 10.5-point favorites in this one. We tend to not like spreads that are this wide open, right, Matt?
Yeah, I'll take the points. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to play start to finish. I don't think the Bears are going to rest anybody. I'll definitely take the points in a rivalry game like this. I would assume there's some sort of weather as well to keep it close, you know.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And I think, too, like this is a team that's got an open head coaching position. They want that young talent out there competing and showing off a little bit of what a future head coach could build. There's something to play for here for the Chicago Bears where there isn't so much to play for the Green Bay Packers. And I think sometimes that can make a big time difference.
Kind of like the Giants, a bunch of people playing for jobs, you know?
Yep, absolutely. All right, coming up next, we're going to take a look at the AFC West. Is it the second best division in football? Matt and I are kind of leaning over that way. We'll take a look at some of the matchups that are going on over there, as well as in the AFC North as we wrap up and continue on with today's episode of the Peacock Williamson NFL Show, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the easiest and most fun way to play daily fantasy sports. Look, I'm not a big lover of the typical fantasy sport, like daily fantasy format. I got to draft a lineup and I got to just assume that my lineup isn't as good as somebody else's lineup and I'm competing for some small slice of somebody else's pie. I don't want nothing to do with that. Here's what I like about Prize Picks. It's you versus the house. It's you versus projections. Prize Picks will take your favorite football players, basketball players, baseball players, whatever it is that you want to find. I think they even have tennis over there. Like you can get into it all. And they'll just set up projections for those players that are competing. So it's you and your knowledge of your favorite sports, favorite players, favorite teams against the house. You pick 2 to 6 players, choose whether or not they're going to come in at more or less than their projection, like Jared Goff, 230.5 passing yards. You think you're going to see more or less than that up against the Minnesota Vikings. You do that for 2 to 6 players, get a couple of them right, bam, you're winning 1,000 times your entry back right now over at PrizePicks. So go and download the PrizePicks app and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's going to give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly with your first $5 lineup with the PrizePicks app. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's PrizePicks. Run your game. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Listen, I have always been very transparent about my therapy journey, and I'm going to be a little bit more transparent and kind of be a little bit more personal than I usually am in this situation, especially with what's been going on down here in New Orleans over the course of this week. Therapy has been a major need for me over the course of this week because of the confusion, kind of the turmoil, all these other things that are going on. And when you're experiencing those things, I've found that it's really, really helpful to simply talk them out with a professional that knows kind of how to guide you through that conversation. It's what I love about BetterHelp. We're not talking about like just some people that are here to help you. Listen, it's not a crisis line. It's therapy. These are licensed, certified therapists that are here to help you on your day to day. And it's accessible. It's super easy to use. And it's all online. So you can do a phone call. You can do a video chat. Sometimes I just type stuff out to my therapist so that they can, kind of go back and forth with me that way too. It's awesome. And it's been particularly helpful for me this week. I think it'd be helpful for you as well. So if you've been thinking about trying therapy, please give BetterHelp a try. Just visit betterhelp.com/lockedon. You're going to get $10 off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. All right, everybody, continuing on with this episode of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show as we pick the rest of the slate here for the NFL. We broke down the Saturday matchups in yesterday's episode, as well as some of those AFC playoff contention spots and things like that. So be sure you go and check that out in yesterday's show. Today, we're focused on the rest. And Matt, I want to take a look at the AFC West. I think we know the best division in football right now is the NFC North. We're used to that conversation being around the AFC West, but is it fair to call the AFC West, in your opinion, the second best division in football this season?
I think it's debatable. I mean, I knew we were going to have this conversation. I think that the division has two things going for it for sure, in that they have three big time head coaches. They've won a lot of games that are that really up the floor for those organizations, high floors for those three teams because of their coaching staff and the organization. And I also think the Chargers and Denver are trending upwards. We kind of opened the show with Washington. I didn't know if Denver or the Chargers would truly compete for a playoff spot, and they're ahead of schedule, and they look like they have quarterbacks, they have coaches, they have resources to get better. The Chargers have a ton of cap space. So I like the arrow going up on both teams. But I also think the AFC North's pretty strong. The Browns are nasty. The Raiders are nasty, but I would hope the Raiders are a little better next year. I'm not sure if the Browns can be. Steelers, Ravens, Bengals aren't going away anytime soon. And my man BP's division isn't so bad either, because they don't have the dog. They don't have the terrible one. They got a lot of B-level teams.
So crappy teams over there.
Right.
And it's not a division where you have this big front runner and you've got a bunch of powerhouses. But man, it's certainly like they don't have the record, the NFC West, that you would look at for maybe some of the best ones, but they're certainly a competitive division. And one of the reasons why they don't have the records is because of how much they all beat up on each other. Like it's a tough division to win, the NFC West.
Absolutely.
And so it's one of the ones that I do think too deserves some conversation as one of the better divisions in the NFL, even if the records don't look like it. I mean, it's just one of those tough ones. It's not the NFC South. It's not the AFC South, right?
No,
it's not just a bunch of It's not just a bunch of bad teams. These are solid teams that are just beating the hell out of each other. Let's stick with the AFC West here. Los Angeles Chargers traveling to take on the Las Vegas Raiders, -4.5, Matt, for the Chargers in this one.
I think Harbaugh is not a take your foot off the pedal type of guy.
Completely agree.
Right.
Exactly where I was going to go.
I will lay the points. Maybe Herbert sits late. He's had a myriad of injuries, but I still think they'll run the ball down their throats over and over and over. I do think the Raiders defense has gotten better, though. I mean, it's an underreported story, but you saw against the Saints. I mean, they're not that bad on that side of the ball, even without Max Crosby. But I'm going to take the Chargers here.
Yeah, that's still a top 10 passing defense. That's still a top 15 or
Yeah.
top 13 run defense over there. I mean, they are it's still a really good defense. And that's surprising considering what they've lost over on that side of the football. So I think we've seen the Raiders find ways to be competitive in these AFC West matchups. I think this will be another one. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't see Harbaugh laying down at any point.
No.
Really ever. Certainly not in this game.
The pickup hoop game or horse or whatever. And the Steelers, if they lose, the Chargers could win this game and go to the 5 seed, which is going to Houston, which is a heck of a lot nicer than going to see your brother in Baltimore the next week.
Bingo.
You know? Yeah.
Bingo. Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of Houston, underdogs traveling to take on the Tennessee Titans. Titans are favored at home -1.5.
I think Houston doesn't play anybody. I think this is just get in and out of there. Tennessee still has something to build on. I think they win this game, and they have a good defense. You know,
Yep,
it's enough.
Yeah, it should be enough in this one. I think that's the reason why Tennessee is actually favored in this game is because of how much Houston's not going to play their guys. They're locked in. They're at the top of the AFC South. They've got nothing to lose, nothing to win in this matchup. As you've mentioned, we'll still see some starters in Houston because you can't sit everybody, but certainly the biggest names will be down in this matchup. So I'll roll with you on that one. Let's wrap up the AFC South here. Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to take on the Indianapolis Colts. Indianapolis Colts -4.5. How do you feel about the development that you've seen from Anthony Richardson so far when it comes to Indianapolis? Is it concerning, or do you feel like things are heading in the right direction for him?
Two things that he doesn't get enough credit for, though, are it's really one big thing. Very few negative plays.
It's true.
It's true. He is really difficult to sack, and he makes good decisions with the football. His accuracy is a problem. But he doesn't throw boneheaded picks or throw into triple coverage like inexperienced guys do. And he's not just great at avoiding sacks because he's big, strong, and fast. He feels it. And so there's some things there that he doesn't get enough credit for. He reminds me of Josh Allen when he came in the league. Like, I thought Josh Allen was a bad prospect coming out of Wyoming because he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Right.
But these guys now, they go to the quarterback gurus in the offseason. They work on their biomechanics and all that kind of stuff. Like when I was a scout, quarterbacks can't get more accurate in the NFL level. And that was true back then because technology wasn't that sound. You know, there wasn't the biomechanics. There weren't these private quarterback coaches. And by all accounts, Richardson's a smart, hardworking dude. Assuming he does that with a quarterback guru, as they all do, there's room for him to save himself for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. I think anybody that's willing to say that Anthony Richardson isn't coming along fast enough is just kind of you're playing an impatient, right? And look, impatience in the NFL at the quarterback position, not like we haven't heard that before, you know? But I think that's what you signed up for when you drafted Anthony Richardson. You signed up for the development.
That's what I was going to say is, what conversation did you have in the draft room before you turned the card in? You know, like, did you think that he was
he's ready now?
Right. I mean, then you're really off. I mean, if that's what you thought, and then he got there and he wasn't ready, well, you should have known that.
Yeah. So do you like the Colts here? 4.5-point favorites going up against Jacksonville?
I think so. I mean, I think that, Richards, I think they play their dudes and they run the ball well enough. Jacksonville's not a total embarrassment, though, with Mac Jones. They could keep it close, but I think I'll take the Colts.
Yeah.
Pretty wishy-washy about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you the thing that I'm really looking forward to in this matchup is if Mac Jones and the Jacksonville Jaguars go out there and cause a problem for Indianapolis's defense, then we get back to that conversation you and I had earlier in the week, to where this offseason for the Indianapolis Colts becomes very much about building up that defense again. And so I think this could be one of those games that, that final game of the year, leave a sour taste in the mouth going into the season. And then that spurs a lot of action sometimes. A little reactive, but sometimes it happens in the NFL.
No, last taste in your mouth, that's a lot. If Brian Thomas is doing end zone dances and you can't tackle ATN and Bigsby and those guys, not so great at home, the people are booing,
100%. All right, coming up next, let's take a look at the NFC as we wrap up the rest of the slate this weekend. I want to start with the NFC South map because we've talked about what success looks like for the Falcons, but the Falcons do also have a chance to get into the playoffs. Let's dive into that next as we continue on with the Peacock Williamson NFL Show, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. It's the final week of the NFL season, and this show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, who is giving you a really good opportunity here if you're a first-time user of FanDuel. Listen, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. Everything that you need. NFL, NBA action, regular season wrapping up, playoffs on the way, college football playoffs underway. I was doing live drive bets all through Notre Dame and Georgia, by the way. Thank you, Notre Dame, for bringing me home some good FanDuel winnings over the courses. I really appreciate that. Really good work there at the Sugar Bowl here in New Orleans. But
I was on the other side of it.
Oh, well. You're on the other side of it? I was all about it. I was all about it. I got very lucky. I changed my mind last second. It worked out great.
Nice.
But when it comes to the look at the rest of the regular season here for the NFL, there's a lot of favorites. And this is really good for you if you're a first-time user of FanDuel, because right now, a first-time user of FanDuel, put down a $5 bet. If you win that $5 bet as your first bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets. So all these double-digit favorites, this is the perfect time to get started with FanDuel today. So go and check them out at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to get started. It's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. And with our friends over at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, wrapping up this episode of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Matt, we're taking a look at the rest of the NFC slate here. I want to start off with the NFC South. Falcons are technically on the outside looking in. They need the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to lose, and then they've got to win in order to get in for this playoffs. I think there's a tie scenario there too, but I don't think we're going to see any ties between New Orleans and Tampa coming up. We predicted that game in yesterday's episode, by the way, if you want to check that out. But the Falcons taking on the Carolina Panthers, who, look, they've given up 30 points in, I think it's 4 of their last 6 games, given up 26 or more in 5 of their last 6 games. There's been a lot of good coming from Carolina when it comes to Bryce Young, not so much over on the defensive side of the football. The Falcons are favored 7.5 with Michael Penix leading the way. How do you see this one playing out?
I think this sneaky going to be a good game. I mean, because Carolina,
I think so too.
They've been out of this for a long time, but they have tons to play for. They're truly building something. Their offense is now respectable. So I think they can hang around. I'm still going to take Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I commend the NFL for putting this at the same time slot as Tampa Bay, because they can't just react and sit everybody afterwards.
Yep.
And I just think Bijan goes insane. I don't know how he was not a Pro Bowler this year, and that's nuts to me. But I think London, Bijan is way more than this defense can handle.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to roll there with you. It's the defense that has been the most concerning part when it comes to Carolina, which actually is good news for Carolina, right?
Yeah, because you can work on that side.
Yeah, it's kind of like we were just talking about with Anthony Richardson. There's no way you turned in your draft card with Bryce Young saying he's going to be ready to go right away. You're trying to develop him. That's why they went and got Dave Canales this season, all that kind of stuff. And so the defense being the biggest concern, probably actually okay for this team. So we'll see where things go there. But I got to roll with you on that, to where, I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers to at least make this one interesting. I might consider taking them 7.5. This might be one of a live bet situation. See how things are going throughout the game, and then maybe jump in at a later time.
I don't love that it's over 7. I'll be honest with that. I'd feel a lot more comfortable at 6.5. But
yeah, I'm with you on that one.
That's a sneaky over, though. That's a sneaky over.
It is. Oh, yeah. Let's look at this. So the over-under on this one for this game is set currently at 48.5.
Oh, I'm over on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not a bad situation. You're talking about a 17-24 kind of game is kind of what your prediction is there in terms of like sitting around that area. But if you take the under, but I don't know, I might go over on that one too. I don't mind that at all. All right, let's wrap up with a look at the NFC West. We talked about this NFC West division being a pretty enticing division to watch because of the competition level. Like, everybody's pretty evenly spread across here. We got the Seahawks against the Rams, with the Seahawks favored on the road, 6.5. We got the 49ers underdogs on the road against the Arizona Cardinals, 4.5 in this one. Let's start with Seattle and Los Angeles. Again, Seattle favored 6.5 in this one.
I don't think the Rams are going to play anybody. I mean, we have enough of a track record with McVay. He doesn't play his guys in the preseason.
No.
I mean,
he plays in week 1.
Right. I mean, I just think that you're going to see the bottom of the roster here. And Seattle's a young coaching staff that's still trying to, build stuff. I think they win going away, and I don't
Yeah.
think McVay even loses a bit of sleep over it,
Not one bit, not one bit at all. The interesting conversation following this game and following, any potential like playoff run that they might go on or anything like that, as they currently hold the 3 seed, is, do we see that team end up being a part of the head coach conversation again, as you and I discussed, with the potential of, it feels like every season we're having some conversation about Sean McVay retiring and all these other things. But here they are after a rough start to the season. What are they, 9-2 over this last stretch? And then here they are in the playoffs. Like, I kind of wonder if maybe the Sean McVay retirement conversation chills out this offseason.
Yeah, if he didn't retire when Aaron Donald hung it up, that was as big a blow as we can handle. And I'm going to assume Stafford comes back. I mean, they both might have a conversation, have a lunch, have a couple beers, and be like, "You're gonna do this again or not?" And probably talk each other into it. I think it's all or nothing. I
love the casual conversation as if they're talking about going on a hike together. You want to do this or no? Yeah,
let's run this thing back.
Yeah, I think I could see both of those guys back, and maybe you see Los Angeles maybe invest a little bit more in the backup quarterback spot to kind of start to develop, look at what could be ahead over the course of this offseason. You have opportunities to do that this year. But I
second round pick or something like that. It would make some sense. Right.
Absolutely. All right, let's wrap up with the San Francisco 49ers, 4.5 point underdogs going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Another good surprise this season has been the Arizona Cardinals.
100%. And again, I think they're going to be more motivated than San Francisco. They've been such a rough year. Things like off the field things with deaths in the family and injuries, and so many bad things have happened to the Niners. I just think they want to be done with the season, where Arizona's still kind of building in a different place organizationally and coach. I'll take the Cardinals here.
Yeah. I'm excited to see kind of the bounce back for the San Francisco 49ers in 2025. They tend to bounce back pretty well after these kinds of seasons. The issue is just that these kinds of seasons happen, in the first place. And that's just kind of the stink that's on the season so far. But I think the other one that I'm really excited to see is where Arizona goes from here. And so if they end this season on a high note, we talked about the impact that a loss, especially a defensive struggle for the Indianapolis Colts, the last taste in the mouth kind of a situation. If Arizona finishes on a high note, I'm excited to see what the trajectory and momentum for that team looks like over the course of the offseason. I think you're going to see players that are going to want to be a part of that team. They're going to want to be a part of that culture, that want to be around Kyler Murray, that want to see, what's going to happen next with Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, we still haven't even seen the peak of him yet. Like, there's still a lot of really exciting stuff when it comes to this Cardinals team.
And we opened the show by who outkicked their coverage. Last year, I thought Arizona greatly outkicked their coverage, and then those coaches were hired by default because nobody wanted the job. That type of thing. Caleb Williams is going to Arizona. They're going to get the first pick of the draft. They're that bad. No, they've gotten way more out of their talent on both sides of the ball than people want to talk about, and it's been a trend. We've had 3 or 4 of these teams. I would spend the whole offseason on defense. As many defensive pieces as I can get.
That's it. This is one of those things, and so I'm excited to see how Arizona continues to build, where they go. I think they've done awesome. They've even put a smile on Locked On Cardinals Alex Clancy's face, and he never smiles about the Cardinals. That's he's a whole new man all of a sudden covering that Cardinals.
Optimism, trending the right way, no doubt.
Yeah. That's exactly what you want. So I think they end the season with some optimism here as well. That propels them into a productive offseason. All right, Matt, there we go. We hit all of them. Every single one. We got you covered here on the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. We'll be back on Monday to recap not only the season, Matt, or the final week of the season, Matt, but it's going to be that time, Black Monday. We're going to see a lot of movement when it comes to these coaching positions. We'll see if Matt and I are right about the number of coaching positions that we predicted might be opening up. So we'll dive into all of that on Monday's episode. For Matt Williamson, who you can follow on Twitter at Williamson NFL. I am Ross Jackson. You can find me at Ross Jackson Nola. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue to follow the show here so we continue to bring you this great NFL content every Monday through Friday. Thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer. And we will see you here again soon on the Peacock Williamson NFL Show, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.